During its long history of nearly 900 years, the Tower of London has been an impregnable fortress, a royal palace, and a bloody prison. Today, it is well out of the red period, financially, as Britain's #1 tourist attraction, with nearly 2 million visitors a year and a gross annual income of £250,000. To be able to preserve an historic building of this magnitude without gimmickry and make it pay for itself is almost a miracle. For the Tower is state property, policed by an ancient order of 38 resident yeoman warders and guarded by troops. What's more, it contains the crown jewels, so gimmickry is hardly appropriate, nor does it seem necessary. What is necessary is an almost round-the-clock job for 200 people employed at the Tower by the Ministry of Public Building and Works. Yeoman Quartermaster Johns is in charge of the 6 Tower Ravens, with a 3 shillings a week food allowance for each. The curator of the Jewel House, Mr. Sutton, walks from his house in the Tower to collect the keys every morning from the keeper, Major General Sitwell, who also lives in the Tower. There has always been armour in this fortress, and the armouries today are the oldest museum in Britain. Each morning, cleaning and maintenance work starts early, especially when the enormous elephant suit of armour, once the property of Clive of India, is due for its regular polish up. The most gruesome and most popular exhibit is the execution block and axe, last used about 200 years ago. The lovely little Norman chapel of St. John, built 900 years ago, is perhaps the most perfect in the country. While the Tower and its ancient connections are being preserved, life for the 57 families who live within its walls is very much in the 20th century. At his surgery in the Tower, the resident medical officer sees the oldest yeoman warder, Mr. Farrow, just about to retire after 21 years. The practical 20th century problem of taking money at the Tower comes under the receiver of fees, who employs 26 saleswomen. The entrance ticket offices are open 30 minutes before the Tower is open to the public. And by 10 o'clock, especially during the summer, the old walls look down on a familiar sight: another siege. But sieges of this kind are welcomed, for they mean preservation, not destruction. The visitors take away souvenirs, and among them is a new one, a medallion specially struck for the Tower by the Royal Mint. As parts of the ancient walls are renovated, yeoman warders welcome strangers rather than repel them. The resident governor, Colonel Sir Thomas Butler, sees his chief warder every morning to discuss the details of handling up to 16,000 people in the day. Either the governor or the keeper of the Jewel House must always be at the Tower. So in the mornings, General Sitwell, who is the only member of the royal household living at the Tower, takes the opportunity of getting his favourite bit of exercise. He walks to Leadenhall Market to do the family shopping. By mid-morning, the Tower grounds are thronged with visitors, but the work of maintenance still goes on behind the scenes. Birds, particularly London sparrows, play havoc with stone walls. They peck endlessly at the wall filling for grit, and after 100 years or so of this attack, the walls could become dangerous. In the armory workshops, they practice a craft that has come down from the Middle Ages. Armour is repaired and restored by highly skilled specialists. The Tower moat, originally connected to the River Thames, was emptied in 1843 because of the stench in hot weather. But at low tide every day, the sluice gates still have to be opened to drain off the low-lying gardens that were once the bed of the moat. The Tower has its own resident chaplain, and weddings still take place in the royal chapel of St. Peter ad Vincula, in which Anne Boleyn is buried. The yeoman warders, once waiters at the royal table, then jailers of highborn prisoners, and now guardians of the Tower, know their history off by heart.
Well, now here, ladies and gentlemen, we have the south side of the Queen's house, built as a royal palace by King Henry VIII in the early 1530s, and it was actually built as a wedding present for his second wife, the very charming Anne Boleyn.
Traitor's Gate, the Bloody Tower, and cannons galore. Everything is photographed, especially the yeomen. But the big magnet, which draws people from every country, is not allowed to be photographed by visitors. It is the crown jewels, the most magnificent regalia of crown and state jewels in the world. About 750,000 people have seen them each year. Many more will now be able to do so, since they've been moved to a new jewel house under the parade ground, with air-conditioned upper and lower chambers. The main items of the regalia, including the crown jewels themselves, are in the lower chamber. The keeper of the jewel house is the representative of the Lord Chamberlain, who is responsible to the sovereign for the safety of the crown jewels, a responsibility which is impossible to assess in terms of cash value. This £360,000 underground stronghold, with massive steel doors and electronic security systems, is guarded day and night. Gold altar plate, used at the coronation of Queen Elizabeth II. The ampulla and the anointing spoon, more than 500 years old. The royal scepter, containing the world's biggest cut diamond. St. Edward's crown, made for Charles II's coronation in 1660, with which succeeding monarchs have been crowned. And the imperial state crown, containing more than 3,000 precious stones, which the Queen wears when she opens Parliament. It is not a new idea to put the crown jewels on show for a small charge. Charles II started it 300 years ago to pay for their upkeep and safety. Only once has anybody tried to steal them, centuries ago, and he didn't get far with them. The Tower of London is unique. There's nothing quite like it. But with all its traditions, the Tower is changing to meet the demands of a history-hungry public in an age of increasing leisure.